On Christmas morning, my daughter asked why everyone got gifts except her. My sister said, "Maybe Santa skips kids who don't fit in." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I just took out my phone, made one call, and on day 4 what they found waiting for them in the driveway made them scream. Christmas morning at my parents' house has always been more formal than festive. Matching sweaters, forced smiles, gifts with perfectly curled ribbon that no one actually wants. But this year I convinced myself it would be different. My daughter was finally old enough to remember things, and I wanted her to have at least one good memory of Christmas with her grandparents. I should have known better. We pulled into the driveway just after 8. The lights were already on, music was playing inside, and I saw my sister's car parked crooked across 2 spots like always. I had a headache before we even got out of the car. My son ran ahead, excited about the smell of waffles and the mystery of what was under the tree. My daughter held my hand, still half asleep but smiling, wearing the little red dress she picked out herself. She brought her drawing for Grandma. She'd spent 2 days on it, their house with snow on the roof and everyone holding hands in the front yard. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her coat pocket. Inside, things were exactly how I expected. My dad was glued to the TV, already halfway through his first scotch. My mom greeted us with a stiff hug and a comment about how I looked tired. My sister acted surprised to see me, like she hadn't texted me the night before asking what kind of wine to bring. I brought gifts. Expensive ones because that's what keeps them civil. Noise-canceling headphones for my dad. A silk scarf my mom said she loved back in July. A drone for my nephew, a bracelet for my niece, and a brand new phone for my son. I even wrapped everything with hand-tied bows. I know better now. We started opening gifts. One by one, each person's name was called. The pile got smaller. My son's eyes lit up when he unwrapped his phone. My sister's boyfriend, who I'd only met once, got a leather wallet with a gift card inside. My niece squealed over a MacBook Air. I sat quietly waiting for my daughter's name to be called. It never was. She waited. She looked around the room confused. Finally, she whispered to me, barely loud enough for me to hear it. "Why did Santa forget me?" Before I could answer, my sister, who had just finished opening her 3rd gift, laughed and said it. "Maybe Santa skips kids who don't fit in." I don't remember anyone objecting. Just laughter. Even my mother, holding her scarf, laughed like it was all harmless fun. My daughter's drawing slipped out of her coat and landed on the floor. No one picked it up. I stood up, walked into the kitchen and pulled out my phone. I made one call. Just one. The $8,000 furniture delivery I had arranged for their New Year's remodel. The custom leather sectional, the new dining set, all of it, I canceled. I didn't say anything. I didn't cry. I just waited. 4 days later I got the call. It was my mother. I didn't even say hello. She was screaming. Not about the missing furniture, but about what showed up instead. A rusty metal folding chair. A flimsy plastic table from a liquidation warehouse. And a hand-delivered envelope, sealed in gold. Inside was a note that said, "You are officially cut off. Find another wallet. Michelle." I hung up before she finished yelling. She called back. I didn't answer. I blocked her number. Then I blocked my dad's. Then my sister's. I didn't tell my kids anything. I took them out for ice cream even though it was freezing and let my daughter buy a toy from the claw machine. She picked a plush penguin and said it was the best day ever. I cried that night quietly after they went to sleep. But it wasn't over. Not even close. They weren't going to let it end like that. They wanted revenge. Or redemption. I didn't care which. What happened next? I still think about it sometimes. And what they brought to my doorstep wasn't just petty. It was sick. But they didn't expect what I would do in return. The silence lasted exactly 10 days. No calls. No texts. No passive-aggressive holiday memes from my sister. Nothing from my parents either. For a while, I let myself believe they were embarrassed enough to disappear. I almost felt relieved. I thought maybe the message had landed. I was wrong. It was a Saturday afternoon in mid-January. The kids were on the living room floor building a Lego castle. My son was arguing with the instructions. My daughter was hunting for a missing turret piece under the couch. I was standing in the kitchen half listening when the knock hit the door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was loud. But demanding. I already knew. When I opened the door, my parents were standing there like nothing had happened. My mom was holding a wrapped gift. My dad had his hands in his coat pockets. And right behind them stood Jerry. Their neighbor. The one who reeks of tobacco and gasoline. The one who's been making comments about me since my divorce. The one my parents always brushed off as harmless. My mom stepped forward and pushed the gift straight into my daughter's hands before I could react. Then she smiled at me like we were on neutral ground. My dad ignored me completely. Jerry leaned against the porch railing like he was settling in for a show. My mom said they decided to stop by because family doesn't stay mad at each other forever. My dad said the money situation had passed. Then my mom turned slightly and gestured at Jerry. She said I shouldn't be alone at my age. That it wasn't good for a woman. That Jerry was a good man who wouldn't hold my past against me. Jerry laughed like he'd already been welcomed in. I told them to leave. My mom took a step inside instead. She glanced around my living room and said it was still decorated nicely considering everything. My dad finally looked at me then. Just once. Not with regret. With irritation. My son came down the hallway and stopped cold when he saw Jerry. My daughter stood frozen too, still holding the present. Then she opened it. Inside was a thin coloring book with the corner bent, pages missing. Crayon marks already scribbled over a few of them. The kind you see in waiting rooms. The kind no one buys on purpose. My daughter didn't speak. He just stared at it. Then she looked at me. That ended it. I told them to get out. All of them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just said it plainly over and over until my mom snapped that I was dramatic and my dad finally grabbed her arm and turned her toward the door. Jerry lingered. He said something about how I changed my mind. He smiled when he said it. I slammed the door in his face. I locked it. Then I slid down against it and lost it. Fully. For the first time since Christmas. My daughter dropped the coloring book on the floor and wrapped her arms around me. My son sat next to us and said low that we should leave the house for a while. Just go somewhere. Anywhere. So we did. We went to the movies. Ate way too much popcorn. My daughter fell asleep halfway through and my son covered her with his hoodie. For a few hours it almost felt normal. But what I didn't know was that someone else had already heard about the visit. My uncle. My dad's older brother. The only one in the family who ever told my father no. He called me the next morning and asked if I was safe. I asked him how he knew. He said my mom told him, expecting sympathy. He didn't give it to her. He told me to come to dinner the following weekend. Said everyone would be there. Said I didn't have to say a word if I didn't want to. He said something else before we hung up. Something that stuck with me. They think they're in control. They're about to find out they're not. I wasn't sure if I should go. When my uncle invited me to dinner, I hesitated. I didn't want more drama, and I sure didn't want to be ambushed again by my parents. But he promised it wasn't like that. He told me just come, bring the kids, eat and listen. No surprises. Except there were surprises. Not the kind I was dreading. The kind that makes you realize someone actually sees you. We showed up a little after 6. It was cold out, the kind of cold where the wind feels personal. I parked across the street and sat in the car for a second, watching people filter into the house. Family I hadn't seen in years, distant cousins, some relatives I didn't even recognize at first. It felt like one of those Thanksgiving episodes from an old sitcom, only no laugh track. The moment I walked in I felt it, not judgment, not pity, but something I hadn't felt around extended family in a long time. Quiet respect. My uncle came over and hugged me. Didn't say anything. Just gave my daughter a little toy from a basket and told my son there was pizza downstairs if he didn't want the fancy stuff. Then he motioned toward the dining room already full. And there at the far end of the table were my parents. My mom in one of her beaded cardigans. My dad with that same expression he always wore when he was surrounded by people he didn't control. They didn't say anything. Neither did I. Dinner was normal. Too normal. My uncle made jokes. Someone passed around pictures from a recent trip to Arizona. The food was amazing like it always is at his house. There was this thin tension running through everything though. Like everyone knew something was coming but no one wanted to acknowledge it. Until dessert. After everyone had picked at their pie and my daughter was curled up next to me with whipped cream on her nose, my uncle stood up. He said he had something to share. A short video, nothing dramatic, just something he thought we all needed to see. He dimmed the lights and turned on the projector he had set up against one wall. The first thing that appeared on screen was my front porch. The day my parents showed up unannounced with Jerry, who was all there. Recorded from across the street by my neighbor, who my uncle had asked to keep an eye out after hearing rumors from another relative that my parents were planning a visit. The footage was crystal clear. My mother handing my daughter a wrapped gift. My father silent, looming behind. Jerry cracking a joke about being single. My mother saying I should stop being so proud. Me telling them to leave. Then it cut to a second video. Christmas morning. My daughter asking why Santa forgot her. My sister's voice, clear as a bell. Maybe Santa skips kids who don't fit in. And then the laughter. That cruel, dismissive laughter. My daughter's face. My face. The silence that followed. No one in the room moved. Not even the cousins who usually made everything into a joke. My uncle turned off the projector. Turned the lights back on. Then he spoke. He didn't yell. He didn't rant. He just laid it out. That this wasn't about an argument. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This was about a pattern. About years of behavior no one wanted to admit was happening. He said my parents had taken advantage of me. That I paid for their house updates, their vacations, their holidays, and they paid me back by punishing my 6-year-old daughter in front of an entire room. He asked the family if that sounded like love to anyone. No one answered. My mom tried to interrupt. He told her no. Told her she didn't get to spin it this time. That she could either sit down and listen or leave. She sat. He went on. Talked about how family isn't measured by blood, it's measured by presence. By action. By how you treat the people you say you care about when no one's watching. My father still hadn't spoken a word. My sister wasn't even there. He probably knew. Then my uncle turned to me. He said he was sorry. Not for what they did, because that wasn't his to apologize for, but for not speaking up sooner. He said he knew. Everyone knew. They just didn't say anything. And then he said something I'll never forget. You've carried too much for too long, Michelle. You've been the adult while the adults acted like children. He looked back at my parents and said from this point forward, Michelle doesn't owe you anything. Not her money. Not her time. Not her presence. If you want a relationship with her or her kids, you'll earn it. My mom got up and said she wouldn't be part of a family that ganged up on her. My dad finally spoke. One word. Fine. And they walked out. No hugs. No goodbyes. But I stayed. I stayed and let my daughter finish her pie. I watched my son laugh with the cousins downstairs. I sat there and felt for the first time in years, like I wasn't shrinking in a room full of people. As we were leaving, my uncle pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. He said, "This isn't charity. This is balance." Inside was a check. More than I expected. Enough to make a dent in the debt I'd quietly racked up keeping everyone else comfortable. But that wasn't what hit me. There was a note inside. Written in his handwriting. It said, "You're not alone anymore. And from now on, neither are your kids." That was the night everything shifted. But it wasn't the end. Because my parents, they weren't done yet. They don't know how to lose. I didn't hear from my parents for a while after the dinner. Weeks went by. My sister stayed quiet too. No messages, no snide remarks online, no fake apologies. Just silence. I thought maybe they finally got it. Maybe that dinner had knocked something loose in their heads, or maybe the shame had finally caught up to them. But if I've learned anything about my parents, it's that when they're quiet, they're planning. The first sign came on a Thursday evening. I got a package. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. My mom's. Careful, perfect cursive like she thought it still mattered. It was addressed to my daughter. I stared at it for a while. I thought about throwing it out, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it before she could see it. Inside was a small velvet box and a letter. The box held a necklace, not new. I recognized it instantly. It was mine. A silver heart locket I'd gotten when I was 16. One of the only real gifts my father ever gave me. I hadn't seen it in years. I thought I lost it during the move after my divorce. Apparently I hadn't. They had taken it. The letter was short. "We wanted her to have something of yours. Maybe she'll grow up better than you did." That was it. No apology. No warmth. Just a jab disguised as a gesture. I didn't give it to my daughter. I put it in a drawer and went to bed with a headache that didn't go away. The next week they showed up again. Uninvited. But this time they didn't come to my house. They showed up at my daughter's school. I got a call from the front office while I was in the middle of a meeting. They said her grandparents were there asking to have lunch with her. They claimed they'd been cleared by mom. The school called me because thankfully my paperwork was in order. I said no. I said absolutely not. I drove there so fast I didn't even grab my purse. When I got there, my mom was sitting in the lobby smiling like she belonged there. My dad was pacing. When they saw me, my mom stood up and acted surprised. Said they just wanted to see their granddaughter. That family should be allowed to visit. That it was my fault things got this far. I asked her how she got the locket. She said she found it in a drawer. A drawer in their house. That they still had some of my things stored away. I asked what else they had. She smiled again. That's when I knew this wasn't about guilt. This wasn't about wanting to fix anything. This was control. My dad didn't speak until I told them to leave. He said I was poisoning my kids against them. That I'd regret it when they were older and I had no one. My mom added that children need their grandparents. I told them they could see them. Someday, if they ever learned what the word respect meant. They left without a fight. But something about the way they looked at me on the way out chilled me. I didn't feel like I'd won. That night I locked all the doors twice. I didn't sleep much. And then, 3 days later, something unexpected happened. My uncle called. He sounded serious. He asked if he could come by. Alone. He showed up with a flash drive. Said, "I wasn't going to show you this. But you need to see what they're doing now." He plugged it into my laptop and opened a folder. It was full of screenshots. Messages. Emails. Apparently, my parents had started reaching out to relatives, saying I was unstable, that I'd lost it since the divorce, that I was using the kids to punish them, that I was emotionally abusive, that I needed help. They were trying to isolate me. They weren't just trying to get back in. They were trying to tear me down if they couldn't. My uncle told me he was done with them, that he'd already cut them off, that other relatives were doing the same now. He said this wasn't a family anymore. Not the way they defined it. Then he looked at me and said something I wasn't expecting. They're scared of you now. That's why they're doing all this. Because you finally said no. But I wasn't scared. Not anymore. Because I knew what was coming next. And so did they. After the flash drive, there was no going back. I spent the next few days thinking through everything. Not just what had happened recently, but all of it. Every holiday where I paid for the food and they criticized the menu. Every birthday they forgot. Every insult disguised as concern. It was like someone had peeled the lid off a box I'd shoved in the back of my mind years ago. I told my kids the truth. Not every detail, they didn't need that. But enough. I told them their grandparents were taking a break from being around us. My son just nodded. My daughter asked if that meant Santa would remember her next year. I told her he definitely would. And then I blocked their numbers again. All of them. For good. Or so I thought. About a week later, I got a call from my friend Rachel. She works at a local furniture store, the same one I canceled the custom order from. She sounded uneasy. She said my parents were trying to reinstate the order. Under my name. They came into the store pretending I had changed my mind and just needed the same delivery sent again. They even brought in a signed letter. Rachel immediately knew something was off. The signature wasn't even close. It looked like a child trying to forge a permission slip. She refused. Told them I had to come in personally. My mom threw a fit apparently. Said she'd just go to corporate. Rachel warned me in case they tried anything else. I thanked her and hung up. I wasn't surprised, just exhausted. But then came the worst part. A few days later there was a knock on my door. No yelling, no loud banging this time. Just a knock. I looked through the peephole and didn't recognize the man at first. He looked official, like a process server. He handed me a folded envelope and walked off without saying a word. Inside was a letter. A formal request from my parents' lawyer. Not a lawsuit, not yet, but a notice. They were claiming grandparent visitation rights. They wanted scheduled, court-approved access to my kids. I stared at it for a long time. My daughter was in the kitchen playing with her dollhouse. My son was on the couch doing homework. They had no idea what had just been shoved into our lives. I called my uncle. He showed up within the hour. He read the letter and didn't say much at first. Just stared at it. Then he looked at me and said they weren't just trying to claw their way back in. They were trying to punish me legally. Publicly. They wanted to drag this into court. Not because they cared about the kids, but because they wanted control. I got a lawyer. And then something I never expected happened. One of my mother's old friends, a woman named Darlene who I barely knew, called me. She said she felt awful but I needed to know something. Apparently, my mother had been passing around photos of me to people in her church. Photos from years ago, taken after my divorce when I wasn't at my best. She was telling people I was unstable. That she was worried for the kids. That I had problems. She was building a case. A fake one. My own mother. I hung up the phone and sat down at the kitchen table. And for the first time in months I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I made a list. Every lie. Every threat. Every manipulation. Every time they twisted something. I was done playing defense. My lawyer and I were going to bury this attempt in paperwork, affidavits, character witnesses, timelines. I had the support. I had the truth. And thanks to my uncle I had the proof. But there was one more thing they didn't see coming. And it would arrive in the mail before the court date ever came. It arrived on a Thursday. I knew the second it hit their porch. Not because my parents called, but because my uncle did. He stayed just far enough back in his car to watch, just close enough to confirm. My dad signed for it without even reading the return label. My mom was already at the door when he walked back inside, envelope in hand. Inside was my final word. The packet was thick. It held everything they thought I'd either lost or didn't have the nerve to keep. Copies of every invoice, every Venmo transfer, every holiday gift receipt. Screenshots of texts demanding money for emergency repairs that somehow always aligned with their vacations. Audio clips they forgot I had. The ones where they berated me after I refused to pay for a new patio heater. Voice memos. Bank statements. All dated, all organized, all impossible to twist. At the very top of the stack was a letter in my handwriting. It said, "This is the history you chose to forget. Consider it restored. You were going to take me to court. You still can. But if you do, this is what the judge will see. This is what I will say under oath. And this is what everyone will know when it's over." I didn't send it to threaten them. I sent it to close the door. That night, I sat on the porch with my son while my daughter drew chalk hearts on the driveway. I watched the stars come out. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I felt still. That was enough. The next morning my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again. Then my dad. Then silence. The day after that, I got a long text from my sister. The first direct message from her since Christmas morning. She said Mom hadn't stopped crying since the packet arrived. That Dad looked like he'd been punched in the face. That maybe I had gone too far. I didn't reply. I thought we were done. Then something happened I didn't expect. A few days before the court date, a small white envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name. I opened it standing right there in the cold. It was a handwritten letter. From my father. It wasn't long. Just a few lines. He said he didn't recognize himself anymore. That he wasn't proud of what they'd done. That he let pride make decisions for the whole family. That he didn't realize how much he'd hurt his granddaughter until he saw her face again in that Christmas video. That everything had spun out of control. That my mother wasn't well. Not mentally, not emotionally. And he hadn't stopped her because he was too afraid of what it would mean to take my side. The last line read, "I don't expect you to forgive us. But I will ask you to protect her from us, until we earn the right not to be kept away." I read it 3 times. It didn't undo anything. It didn't make me want to rush back into their lives. But it hit me somewhere I didn't expect. Not in the heart but in the part of me that had always wondered if they were capable of seeing it. My lawyer called the next day to tell me the hearing had been dropped. Their lawyer filed a full withdrawal of the visitation request. They were walking away. Or maybe they were backing down. Either way, I had won something more important than the case. I had protected my daughter. I had kept my son out of the chaos. I had broken the pattern. And my uncle, he never once said, "I told you so." He just showed up with groceries the next weekend and fixed the hinge on my front door. That summer we went away for the first time in years. Just the 3 of us. A cabin by the lake. No Wi-Fi, no TV. My daughter brought her chalk even though the driveway was gravel. My son read old paperbacks and swam until his fingers wrinkled. I drank coffee on the porch in the mornings and watched the sun rise. And not once did I think about my parents. Not until the last night when my daughter looked up from her coloring and said out of nowhere, "Mommy, I don't think Santa skipped me. I think he was just waiting." He was right. He was waiting. And next Christmas? You won't forget her name.